So as we continue our discussion surrounding, Wolverine-related content in response to the trailer for Logan having been released, what I want to do here is I want to talk about how Wolverine killed all the supervillains. Now, this actually comes to us as issue 111 of the What If line of stories. Now, for those of you guys who know about What If, bear with me for a second while I run over this for those who don't. If you're coming from DC Comics, the What If line of publications are similar to what you call Elseworlds. The difference here is that Elseworlds are just stories that are out there. They don't usually tie into the existing continuity. The What If stories in Marvel Comics do. So it's like, what if, Wolverine had killed the Incredible Hulk? When the two of them first met, when Wolverine first appeared in Marvel Comics, it was in a battle with the Incredible Hulk. The What If story is based on what if Wolverine had killed the Incredible Hulk in that battle, then how would the conflict turn out, or how would the world turn out? There's stories like, what if Aunt May had died instead of Uncle Ben? There are some really cool stories like that, but they always have their roots in the main continuity. And for those of you guys who are not coming from DC Comics and are just, kind of curious about Marvel in and of itself, the same idea still applies, that Marvel has one straight universe, which is called the Earth 616 continuity, and all the what if stories are just alternate realities that branch off of that. Now, this particular story actually has its roots in Wolverine becoming a Horseman of Apocalypse. Now, the way this worked was that in the mid-1990s, comic books had just been struggling in general, and so the goal was to try to reinvigorate them and keep them interesting. But at the same time, Wolverine had lost his adamantium in a battle with Magneto during the events of Fatal Attractions, which I actually have a video on. But because of this, Wolverine was effectively sent off into the wild, where he became what's called feral Wolverine. And his comics actually lasted this way for quite some time. The issue with this was that it wasn't a story that could be done forever. Marvel eventually had to find a way to bring him back, to make him into the Wolverine that we always knew. And so what they did is they basically initiated a story where the villain Apocalypse had kidnapped Wolverine and Sabretooth and basically said, whichever one of you wins in a battle to the death will not only, become my Horseman War, but will also receive enhancements. And so because Wolverine was still relatively feral at this point, because he was a far more capable fighter than Sabretooth was, he ultimately killed Sabretooth. And in doing so, Apocalypse restored his adamantium to his bones and made Wolverine into the Horseman War. Now, in that original story, Wolverine's brainwashing was basically worn off by a combination of Jubilee and the rest of the X-Men, who were able to talk him down and bring him back. In this story, that didn't happen. Instead, Wolverine remained the Horseman War. And so what we do here is we initially pick up with a group called the War Watch. And the War Watch basically just functions to ensure that the world stays safe. And this is actually one of the really cool concepts here, because in this, in this future, there is no war between humans and mutants. That humans and mutants are basically living in peace. That Xavier's dream of a peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants has actually come to fruition. In addition to this, we also see that this, what seems to be this fledgling group of young officers are brought in at the behest of their sergeant, and they're basically told that there is a group calling themselves the Wolf Pack, who are basically a gang that have been running amok and they've been attacking stores. Now, what this tells us is that in this future, that there is still violence. Violence is very rare. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's quickly snuffed out. And that these young people are a combination of regular humans and mutants who have come together under the banner of the Wolf Pack and begun engaging in violent acts. And so what ends up happening is the War Watch, of course, bands together. These police go out to the mall. They attack these young people. They basically, they grab them, they throw them, or at least they seem to subdue them with gas, and then they take them, and have them arrested accordingly. The whole question is, how did things get to this point? At what moment did everything seem to change? And what we're told, or at least what we're given, is this sort of quick rundown on the history of Wolverine's life. What we know is that before he joined the X-Men, Wolverine was a part of a group called Alpha Flight as part of Canada's Department K, which was Canada's superhero team. The idea was that as part of Alpha Flight, Wolverine served to carry out government actions and so on and so forth, but eventually his journeys brought him to the attention of the X-Men. Not only that, he had of course received his adamantium upgrades by virtue of the Weapon X program, but in light of all this, when the time came whereby he was made a Horseman of Apocalypse, because the X-Men either didn't come to his aid or didn't arrive fast enough, that immediately after he became the Horseman War, he killed Apocalypse right off the bat. Now, something to point out here is that this is is entirely possible. Apocalypse, yes, he has celestial technology. Yes, he's wildly powerful. He's one of the most powerful mutants in existence. He can alter his size to virtually anything, but Wolverine having adamantium makes him virtually indestructible. And because there's really no metal that Apocalypse could be in possession of, with the exception of adamantium itself, that could keep him safe from Wolverine, he was easily killed by Wolverine. Now, this is also kind of funny too, because those of you guys who ever watched X-Men the animated series, whenever Wolverine used his claws on Apocalypse, it never worked. That was actually an error. That was a mistake in the show, that his claws should have easily torn through Apocalypse's armor. But the fact remains here that after becoming the Horseman War, he basically embarked on a crusade to kill off every single supervillain he came across. So he killed off the Juggernaut, he killed Pyro, he killed Magneto, he killed them all. He killed Arcade, who was a small-time villain that basically used tricks and things like that. He's like Marvel's version of the Riddler. But the fact remains here that he killed anybody. He was much like the Punisher. He killed anybody who was involved in governmental corruption, who was involved in trafficking. It didn't matter if they were mutants. It didn't matter if they were humans, if they were political officials, if they were your average Joes. He killed every single bad guy, anyone who had ever done anything nefarious in the Marvel Universe. The problem with this was that the heroes also recognized that if allowed to continue unchecked, that Wolverine would basically become a detriment to the world as a whole. And so all the superheroes of the world came together and they began forming their own governments, their own, their own groups and organizations. So the Avengers went against Wolverine, the Inhumans went against Wolverine, the X-Men went against Wolverine, and he killed every single one of them. He killed every last one. And so in response, humanity and what was left of the mutant population banded together and formed a group called War Watch. And War Watch was designed to quite literally keep tabs on what it was that Wolverine was doing and eventually find him and bring him in. The problem was that they were never really successful in doing that, simply because of the fact that if Wolverine doesn't want to be caught, then he won't be caught. And so what this does is this continues along the path of one of these young recruits who goes to the Hudson Bay Watch grounds, which is kind of like the next step in the War Watch. Not only that, he's also become a little bit disillusioned with everything that's going on. And so in his journeys, he actually comes across a monk who seems to be in hiding, or at the very least seems to be just kind of watching all these things unfold. And the idea is to learn from him everything he can. Not only that, this person's operating under the mantle of Brother Xavier. And so the initial idea is maybe this is Charles Xavier. Maybe Charles Xavier was the last surviving guy. In addition to this, what Brother Xavier also does is he gives an account of Wolverine's history and saying that not only, did he turn against various villains, but he also fought people who were allies at one point in time. Again, tying into this element of killing off the various superheroes and the various supervillains that existed. And so in response to this, basically what he did is he recognized the fact that some aspect of his personality, Wolverine was always doomed to be the Horseman War, that all that, becoming the Horseman War did was allow this dark aspect of his persona to completely emerge and allow the humanity of who he was to be cast aside. And so in the end, what we learn is that this person that this young man's been talking to is actually Wolverine himself. In addition to this, once they get, back to normal society, that when the War Watch is still trying to deal with this gang, this wolf pack that's, running amok throughout various cities, that Wolverine actually comes to their aid, and Wolverine is able to stop every single one of these kids. Not only that, this guy, some of these people also recognize that it seems to be Wolverine himself. And so once this meeting between the two is completed, once this young man officially allows himself to be inducted into the order of monks, which are part of this War Watch, once he's become kind of a leader, so to speak, that Wolverine officially reveals who he is and tells him that the goal is to always keep conflict at bay, the goal is to always keep battle at bay, and that it's a never-ending fight in order to achieve this goal. Having said that, I don't know if you guys feel like I do, but this is one of the worst written stories that I've ever seen in the history of my life. This is so badly written, it's not even funny. But it is still an interesting concept with Wolverine taking on the entirety of the superhero and the supervillain community. But because I don't like to focus on the negative, we're going to bring this to an end. But post down in the comments, let me know. Try to be nice to each other, guys. Try to be civil. Post a comment down below and let me know what you guys think about this story, whether you thought it was good, whether you thought it was bad, what you thought the case may be. And if you're new here to Comics Explained, make sure you hit the sub button, become part of the Rob Corps. You may or may not get a shiny new ring. And yeah, make sure you guys drop a like, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.